there, welcome to Glen Talks, where we talk about all things business and people that are shifting the landscape and creating positive differences in their communities and industries. Today's guest, we have Stephen Stark, who's the president and CEO of Tsawwassen Shuttles, Inc., and we're going to hear his remarkable journey as an Indigenous entrepreneur. Thank you so much for joining us today, Stephen.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the intro as well.
No problem. You've got a real interesting story, and you've been speaking at a number of different conferences, and you've been doing a lot of awesome work over the last many years. Can you share a little bit with us about your journey in establishing yourself at Tsawwassen Nation?
Well, I wouldn't be able to do it without the help of everybody around me. I'm just a conduit of information, and I have a very strong voice, and I also have a real compassionate heart to listening and creating safe space for people as well. And that's something that I've had to learn hard lessons when I was a kid about making safe space and making people feel comfortable. And so, when I hear of, the words that you spoke and the conferences and speaking and engagement and stuff like that, I really do honor the ones that have taught me before me. And the ones that will go after me as well. My Tsawwassen First Nation, was a young lad, 15 years old, reconnected with my biological father and fell in love with fishing shortly after that. And anybody that ever knew me growing up as a kid, I always talked about how much I love fishing and that I was going to go back and make something of it. And it's funny, years later, I have people, they're like, you said you're going to do what you said you're going to do. Fishing and having a sense of identity within my own community, not having a community growing up as a child and kind of being displaced, and not in the sense of displaced of not having a home, but moving around from town to town to town and not having a real sense of roots. I found a lot of solace and calmness being around Tsawwassen First Nation and having family, right? And so wanted to make sure that I have that for my children as well when I did finally have one.
Yeah. And so you've taken on some various different leadership roles with Tsawwassen. What has that been like, and what has that journey been like? Because you originally, you came to find your identity from Tsawwassen, and then you came home. So how has that journey been?
Well, there's things in life that kind of propel you into a direction, and fishing was one of them, and making sure that I learned to establish my Indigenous rights over fishing rights. And, you have some very influential people in the world that helped get us onto the map to be able to fish and harvest and also to be able to sell, like the sparrow case. That was a very important moment for our Indigenous people across Canada and around the world, I think, as well. And you hear the stories, and so you just want to be able to do your part and make sure that you're protecting it as well. And so, I've had variety roles over the years. The chairman of the housing, did the chairman of the ALR committee at Tsawwassen First Nation, been on the advisory for the Natural Resources Committee as well. I think that's first place I started. And then being elected in as a legislator as well for multiple terms. I think my first time was in 2011 as when I was first elected. And then the last term was council. I was on council for 4 years.
Safety is a huge priority and is a big pillar for your company. What has propelled that to be the top pinnacle for a lot of different companies? You hear, it's some there's a saying, it's always safety first, but at the end of the day, it's usually like safety is usually third or fourth on the list behind productivity. So why push safety to the utmost, and what experiences over time have led you to make that a top priority for your organization?
Well, my childhood. Right. I have, a very troubling childhood. Safety wasn't, a real, sometimes it wasn't a safe place at home. And, I've had some big struggles in that area. And so for me, it's about creating safe space for people, right? And by doing so, obviously, making a safe work environment, making sure that, anytime an employee or even a person comes to me with some issues, that I hold it in confident, and then I try to give them safe space to try to communicate the best that they can. Safety, can be expanded in many ways. And, over the years of hiring so many different people and working with so different many people, we know that people's each unique personalities, right? You have to tailor your relationship to them and gain their trust. And, I am, a big advocator for, no violence at the workplace. We don't swear. We don't, get into confrontation. It's about de-escalation. It's about, lifting each other up and trying to move forward. But those are things that I, not saying that I didn't learn them when I was younger. It wasn't, it was a tough childhood, right? And so, making sure I practice those principles that I want to be able to lead by example, even in my own home and for my kids. And so, obviously, the basic PPE stuff, we're talking beyond that. And so, I'm talking like a 30,000 foot view kind of safety wise over a community, over your friends, over your family, right? That kind of stuff. That's where the pillar to safety comes from.
Awesome. And what led to the development of Tsawwassen Shuttles? What's the story there?
Well, 2011, I created Stark's Transportation. It was just a small little bus company. I did a little bit of work with Scott Jacob's brother, and then I moved on to BA Blacktop. And Tsawwassen First Nation is in a unique position where in 2009 it signed the treaty, and it was able to have authority to govern its own land by laws and principles and bylaws and permitting and development. And so, I quickly seen opportunities where band members, if positioned properly and built relationships, they would be able to be quite successful depending on the business. And so I started Stark's Transportation. Like any entrepreneur, you want to be able to brand your own name. And then in 2015, the Tsawwassen Mills Mall was just about to launch. I was going after that contract. And I decided to rebrand to Tsawwassen Shuttles Incorporated, had more of a ring to it. And then I realized it was going to be the acronym of TSI. And so, when I first started, I thought, because I used my boats as marine contracts for environmental impact studies, and then I started the bus company. I didn't expect that it was going to be street sweeping and water trucks and tow trucks and so on and so on. It just morphed into so many different umbrellas that I didn't realize that it was there for opportunities. And again, the Tsawwassen Treaty has been able to afford the opportunities if you captured it properly and had the energy to go after it as well and maintain those relationships. It's been fun.
So you're coming up on a decade, I guess, pretty quick. Mm-hmm. What sorts of adversity have you overcome? Like what were some of the biggest challenges with starting out? And then as you've started developing and creating partnerships, how has that journey grown over time, and what kind of challenges have you faced in those categories?
Good question. At the very beginning, you don't know what you don't know. And I learned at very early stages from some very incredible people that know your limits and then find somebody else that can help you with the ones you don't, right? And, the government of BC and the federal government were talking about Indigenous procurement opportunities and 5% if you're 51%. owner and if you have equipment and qualifications and the availability, you were going to see a shift in society where the province was going to start mandating contractors to utilize Indigenous businesses. I seen the writing on the wall in 2010 and slowly started to gather knowledge around that and positioning TSI into a position where I get to ask questions, right? And it's about asking questions and receiving it and storing that information. And, you know, I bid it on quite a few jobs. I wasn't successful, but I would always go back and ask why. And that was the biggest question is like, why? What can I do better? What can I do to win the next one, right? And it's constantly coming back to knock on the door. Not forcefully, but just, you know, email back, friendly reminders, you know, doing 2 week or 3 weeks or every month follow-ups. Hey, it's Steve Stark again. We'd really like an opportunity to build a relationship. And then it just kind of kept growing. I grew to the point where, you know, TSI won our first contract, second, and, you know, we don't win them all, but, you know, you throw enough at it, you're going to get some of them. And then the reputation just started growing over time. And like I said, it just started off with the boats and then it moved to the buses and then street sweeping. That one was a challenging opportunity because my own nation at the very beginning didn't think street sweeping was going to be a successful one. And I remember going in to talk to our CAO of the ECDev department at that time, and I explained to him I wanted to do street sweeping, and I don't sit down writing it out. I don't write the business plan, but I could see it. I could see it in my mind. And I followed the street sweeper company for just around in my area. I could just see what he's doing and create that knowledge of his pattern. And then I went and talked to all the developers, and all the developers said they would make the switch if I can provide the same style of sweepers, better rates and less travel. And then dump fees were a lot cheaper as well. They all agreed to make a shift. And so I had somewhat of a clientele. Then I went to the nation and proposed it to the ECDev department. And basically the ECDev president CEO at the time told me I should go work for a sweeping company first before I opened up one, and maybe work for them for about a year and then come back and see if it was a fit. Not so politely words. I said, that's a terrible idea. And I don't need to work for somebody else to understand that the business model and how to hire people and figure out how to operate it. I've already done it with the buses. I've done it with the boats. It's just another business investment. And then, you know, it was less than a year later, I bought my very first sweeper, and now today we got 6 of them, and we're working on major projects and small projects and major companies and, you know, one-off companies. We get new referrals all the time. And, you know, I think we probably got about 10 sweeper operators now.
Wow.
And we're all over from Hope to North Vancouver on different projects any time of the day and night.
That's awesome. And yeah, sweeping's kind of, it's a bit of a niche market. There's a lot of, you don't realize how many different services that actually use sweeping in that as well too, even just from a quick overlay for paving or.
That's right.
Can you share some of the insights and strategies you've implemented to grow TSI to this scale and level, and how you've been able to grow your revenue and expand your customer base over the last decade?
Diversification has been my success. Learning to morph into uncharted territories and creating businesses like the water trucking that complement the street sweeping, that kind of work with, even with the busing, they are all very connected, whether it's the marine, the busing, the sweeping, and the water trucks, and then also the tow trucks just recently. They have very similar clients. And so creating a one-stop model for clients that, first of all, you built long-term trust. You've proven yourself in the industry from the different services as well. Pricing is good. At the heart of it, I'm a businessman, and I'm trying to find ways to help the client be able to just feel confident enough to hire us for all the services, whether they only need one of them because it's not, the rest aren't pertaining towards them, but it's about networking, right? And the other layer to all of it, to me, is actually the last layer, is that I happen to be Indigenous as well. And it's not my first part of my conversation that comes out. It's, I want to be treated as a regular service provider in Greater Vancouver. And while I know that there is potential benefits for me being Indigenous, I still have to do the work. It's not like these opportunities are just thrown at my table because they need to fulfill the mandate. They're looking for qualified companies that are safety driven, that have Indigenous values, that got the right equipment, and price. Just because I'm Indigenous doesn't mean I can inflate my price by 25% and still pretend I'm going to get the project, right? So all things still need to be fairly equal. Just in today's market right now, we're still in a low bid price, winner takes all kind of market right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always safety is a big component, but at the end of the day, it's always the cheapest bid that always ends up. And then there's the then you have people, they run into some of those safety and quality issues, and then having to try and overcome some of that stuff, and particularly when you're dealing with Ministry of Transportation projects and stuff like that, it becomes a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, absolutely.
So shifting into like mentors, who have been like huge mentors for you over the years, and what stands out in terms of your relationship with those mentors?
Well, first and foremost, my biggest mentor has always been Chief Ken Baird, Chief Tsawwassen. I don't think I'd be here without him. And I openly share that story all the time. I was an addict living in a user house at the time when Ken allowed me to first live with him, and gave me the ability to have a safe place as well, and get clean. And I lived with him for 5.5 years. We became best friends, and through that relationship became a mentor through a father figure. And he knew a lot about fishing and crabbing, and we spent copious amount of time on the water together. And then we were also in the political world together as well. And so, unfortunately, Ken passed away a couple of years ago through cancer. It was devastating to the community as well, because he's such an amazing man. And so you just want to honor him. And then, I've have Brian Paye. He's been mentoring me. Amazing man, very humble, patient. I've always hear him giving thanks and gratitude for everything as well. And so these people lead by example, and so they rub off on you. But they also attract the same type of people. And so, I listen, and Brian gives me guidance and help me with my business plan and financial plan and a bunch of other ideas. And we work together on a few company boards that I own. And so I bring him in as well. And then there's Nikki Burgunder, a really good friend of mine. We've known each other maybe for 11 years now. She worked at Matcon Civil and now has moved over to the defense team for the federal government. And, wealth of knowledge. They are, they know the Indigenous world, they know construction, they have been able to help give some guidance and write policies and procedures and, work order forms. But they see something in me that they want to invest into because my success is the success through their lens as well, right? And so, it would be a lot different if I was out there floundering around and not listening to any of the suggestions and just running amok. Then obviously I wouldn't have very good mentors. And so, taking the time to check in with them and listen and make introductions and foster those relationships, it takes time.
And so now that you've had mentors, where do you see your role now as you start shifting towards mentoring the youth that are coming up? And what sort of advice do you have for anybody that's wanting to engage and begin their own journey of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I get it. I'm very honored, honestly. I get a lot of questions all the time on how do I do it and what have I done, and would I do anything different in my life? Do I regret anything? I think every life lesson helps build who you are and gives you guidance. And so, it's hard to create an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur usually is driven from inside, right? And there's nothing substitute hard work and longevity. And I get young men or women, in saying they just started or they've been at it for a couple of years and they're waiting for their chance, right? And how do they create space and create those opportunities? And, it takes time. It takes time, and it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of sacrifices. It takes even failed relationships at some point, because you're so focused on your business as well to learn these lessons in life and find value in what is more important. And so at the beginning, I was a workaholic. It wasn't necessarily a workaholic. I just love what I do. I love fishing. I love driving the buses. I love creating opportunities. And so, if you don't love what you do, you're not going to be able to be very successful at it. And so I keep telling people, just follow your heart, follow your dreams, and, don't give up on them. And it sounds cliche at times, but, I'm a big manifester. I've manifested almost everything in my life. And, some days I can completely map it out in my mind. Some nights I wake up at 2 a.m, the light bulb goes off. I see a very clear path. And then I got new direction, and I'm going with it. To me, is that the ancestors, speaking to me and help guiding me, maybe. So, yeah, have purpose.
And passion for what you do. And a lot of that comes from your work on the water. And earlier you had mentioned the sparrow decision, and that's the work of Bud Sparrow standing up for the rights of being able to fish, right? And more recently, you've stood up and you've used your voice with the development of the Roberts Bank terminal, RBT2. Can you tell a little bit about you standing and using your voice and your stature in Tsawwassen to be able to stand up?
Yeah, good old RBD2. I think for me, it really hits the core of who we are as people at the Tsawwassen people. We're the salmon people facing the sea. We see Delta Port actions all day long, the banging of the trains, and you see ships coming and going and containers smashing into each other out there. Just the ripple effect of a development, whether it's impacting the birds or light or noise, and understanding that every impact, is accumulating impact. And then you got the ferry terminal as well. And you got a lot of pollution. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There you have semis, trucks, cars, people. You got boats. Every one of them's a polluter. Tsawwassen First Nation stuck in the middle of it, and we have a high rate of cancer. And people, unfortunately passing away rapidly in our community, and it's not pleasant. It's hard on the people, but there's no real solution. There's no, like, at what point have we hit the tipping point of cumulative effects, right? At what point do we say enough is enough? Here we have a project that's going to decimate our crab grounds. It's probably going to decimate our cultural way of life. You take away our ability to be on the water, and they say that they're not going to impact it, but they are. They're pushing us further away from our own front doorstep. You have crabs that are going to be, severely impacted from that project. You have contaminated, and they'll say it's all clean material. Well, there's any material is going to be that's not foreign already on top of there is a foreign material, right? And so what is the effect of when you create a landmass like that, and what happens to the water that's got to go around it? How does that impact the salmon, the fish, the birds, Also,
or the blue heron that nest there as well.
Yeah. It's all, and the killer whales, spring salmon, like it's all very impactable. But that spot, I've myself and my cousins and my relatives before me and before that have crabbed in those areas since time immemorial. We know that, and so. I have a voice that seems to have touched the core of this project, and I'm very passionate about it. I've involved myself heavily in advocating against the project for a multitude of different reasons. There is no amount of money that is going to convince me that this project is going to be good for the area. A regional assessment needs to be done. Cumulative impact study needs to be done, right? There's just so many unknown questions to me. Who's the terminal operator, right? The shared revenue plan, terrible plan, but I'm not allowed to talk about that. Some of it's confidential.
Yeah. And with some of it bringing in machines to replace work that workers can do as well. It's also controversial on another complete level. But your work, standing up and using your voice, has led to currently how many protections were and.
Yeah, well, the project got its approval from the federal government, and it. Just so we're clear, this is like the longest EA project in history in Canada to get through. And then
the EA is environmental assessment.
Environmental assessment, yeah. And so it's such a controversial project that the federal government really doesn't want to make a decision because damned if you do and you're darned if you don't scenario. But what they did do is they said the project gets approval under this 370 plus legal conditions. They have to, and that is like, that and alone is the most conditions ever placed on an EA project for approval as well. And it already had to go through a comprehensive EA review. And so, a lot of the conditions probably will be met, but it's definitely going to take a lot of time and money and efforts. And you have multiple groups that are still going to be filing legal conjunctions against the project to keep stalling it. And so will that project actually get lifted off the ground? The previous president is no longer there. A new one has moved in. You start to feel the sense that the Port Metro Vancouver is taking a shift in their ideas away from that project. There's another project that's proposed on the inside, which I believe is GCT's project. Might be a better option, less environmental impact, might be able to achieve the container capacity over the next 20, 30 years and still be able to generate the same type of revenue and keeping good local jobs going as well. Because the new terminal, there's so many unknown questions. Who's paying for it? Where's the money coming from? We don't even have the money for the project, and who's the client and who's the operator, and Again, you got Delta doesn't want it. Tsawwassen First Nation approved the project but said they didn't give consent, but then wrote a consent letter. So it's very confusing as to, even as a nation member, as to what is my nation even doing on that project either. And so, but again, there's so many other projects in the region. You got George Massey, you got Tilbury, you got RBD2, you got the Iona Slough, you got multi-billion-dollar projects. When do we start looking at all the projects collectively instead of singling each one out and putting our blinders on and saying we can't talk about the other projects because we can only talk about this one because it only impacts us here? But the Fraser River in the lower estuary is the main vein for most, probably, I would say it's probably the most ecological sensitive area in the world, right? One of. So again, nobody's looking at the 30,000 foot view because nobody can tell us, are we at the tipping point, right? Or are we still got more to go?
Well, thank you for your leadership and being, the voice for being the stewards for this type of thing. And when it comes down to a lot of this decision making, in previous conversations, we talked about making the decisions today for what's going to stand 7 generations from now. And, being that active voice and being able to stand on the shoulders of giants like the late Bud Sparrow, and being able to use your voice is amazing. So thank you for your leadership for that. And where do you see, the goals for Tsawwassen Shuttles tying in with that and having to stand up and be a voice? Sometimes that's going to be in the way of productivity, I guess, for what you can bring in for your company.
Again, I'm very grateful to be in a position where I am today. I have been afforded the opportunity to have a voice. And people ask me, how do I get involved? What can I do to make a change? I'm like, you already are. You're already speaking. You're making change just by speaking to your friends, your family, and creating space to have a bigger conversation. Like it's a ripple effect. And if you look at it that way, and so Tsawwassen Shuttles is a ripple effect. I'm growing in a multitude of different areas and touching a lot of different companies for business-wise, but what I connect is the integral part of their companies, those integral people that actually run the company, that are in it, that are looking for change. And so Tsawwassen Shuttles is inspiring a lot of Indigenous people to think outside the box, right? Think that, you don't have to just have one type of company. You can make multiple companies. And it's just not only Indigenous, it's anybody is starting to realize, like, diversification helped me get through COVID. If I had just a bus company, which we know, school buses and that division got shut right down. But we were able to shift drivers over to being water truck and street sweepers, and, construction was still essential service. I'll continue to keep looking for diversification and partnerships and building those good relationships. And, where do I see Tsawwassen Shuttles going? Right now, I'm just having fun with it. I see it continuously keep growing. It's been a well-branded company that has been the help of anybody that knows me, knows Tsawwassen Shuttles and knows the integral compass of it.
Mm-hmm. And last question. So speaking of partnerships, what do you look for when forming a partnership and in terms of building a relationship and bridging a relationship with a partner?
I think it was last year. I can't remember the lady, but she stood up and she asked the same question. I pondered my thoughts for about 10 seconds and I said, monogamy. I look for monogamy, and everybody laughed in the audience, but I expanded on that. A partnership and a JV is like a marriage. and you have to treat it as such, and you have the same principles, even though that you got it written down in your 18 or your 22 page document, talking about how the relationship is going to hold its integral compass and be honorable and longevity purposes and conflict resolutions, and just simple relationship things that you would think organically should come out of any friendship. But unfortunately, when you get into creating partnerships and JVs, you got to write it all down, just to have it papered. But I really do, and I, all joking aside, I'm not looking for partners that have partnerships with, 20 or 10 or 30 different companies, because they see an opportunity to partner with either First Nations or Indigenous people or Indigenous communities. Your partner should be super active in looking for opportunities, and it's it's real fundamental things, but unfortunately, we have to say them out loud. It's not just one side bringing opportunities because they have Indigenous lens to them. It's looking for all opportunities. It's looking for bridging capacity, bridging information, bridging knowledge. It's being able to call anybody in any of the organizations and vice versa to be able to pick their brain about certain components about the company, or to help mentor you so you can grow your different divisions over time as well and build those capacities. And so the relationship really does have to ebb and flow back and forth. And so, I'm very grateful for my partnership with Glen, Trax, Delta Aggregates, Main Roads. Like, these are great MatCon Civil. These are all, relationships with companies that, I could pick up the phone and talk to not only the president, but anybody in the organization, and not have them feel like they're threatened that, I'm taking information, because they want to be able to help. They want you to have proper work order forms. They want you to have proper guidance and ask HR questions and use their experiences. These are companies that got hundreds of employees each. And so, they want to see Tsawwassen Shuttles succeed.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on. We have a rapid fire section.
Rapid fire.
So we have a few questions. We're going to roll down a list, and you want to answer those in about one word to one sentence. Okay. Favorite go-to place for doing business lunches?
Cactus Club.
Favorite fish?
Sockeye.
Favorite crustacean?
Favorite what?
Crustacean.
What's it? I don't know.
Crab, lobster.
Oh, it's crab.
Definitely crab.
Yeah.
Best fishing spot?
I can't tell you that.
No one
Out
ever
in the
does.
Strait of Georgia.
Strait of Georgia. All right. Favorite fish to fish for, though? There's a bunch of different methods.
Favorite fish to fish for? I would say halibut. I like halibut fishing when I was doing it.
Go-to morning ritual for getting focused?
I was starting my day with a workout.
If you could change one government policy overnight, what would it be?
It would be cumulative impact study policies.
And if you can meet with one politician for lunch this week, who would it be?
Abby. Mm-hmm.
Who's been your biggest mentor?
Ken Baird, Chief Tsawwassen.
One piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Don't change a thing.
What's your favorite way to unwind after a long day of work?
Just my kids and family.
And aside from fishing, what's one of your favorite pastimes?
Building cars.
And what kind of car are you working on right now?
Building a 3-wheel supercar right now.
If you could sit down for coffee with anyone, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Well, I grew up always admiring Sean Connery.
So we thank you so much for joining us today, Stephen. It's been a real awesome opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. look forward to seeing all the awesome things that's going to be coming in the future, and starting to see some of the tow trucks now heading out on a lot of the major highways there. So thank you so much for joining us, and I do have a little something for you. We look forward to seeing lots of really, really exciting things from you in the future.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me. And Tsawwassen Shuttles is just getting started. There's a lot of work for us to be doing, and I'm really looking forward to the Steve Stark 2.0 coming along and picking up that torch and moving that needle over.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's our show for today. If you like the content that you see, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Share it with your friends and colleagues. We're going to continue to bring you inclusive insights and exclusive experiences. See you next time.